Hi.
Hey everyone, so welcome to Fiveable, and today you're with us, AP World History Modern, and we're going to talk about Imperial art and architecture. My name's Jed, and
My name is Charlie, and this
and
is
we're going to
a
yeah,
co-stream, so we're going to be talking together. So you'll get to get two different perspectives about this really cool topic. It's kind of like a mixture of world history and art history, so it's going to be really fun. It's a very visual lesson.
very interesting. So real quick plug: follow us on Instagram or Twitter or YouTube. It's at Think Fiveable, especially Instagram. We have lots of good memes there and announcements. Keep in touch.
Okay, so this is the basic layout as to what we're going to do in the stream. So first, we're just going to introduce ourselves, who we are, why we're here, that kind of thing. And then we're going to do some definitions of some words that you guys should know before we get into the actual history content. So today we're going to be going over art and architecture from different regions of the world from 1450 to 1750. And we're going to try and get a bunch of broad perspectives, a bunch of different continents, a bunch of different cultures in. So it's going to be really fun. We're going to go over the Incas, the Mughals, the Ottomans, the Benin Empire, and then we're going to end with the French. And then we're going to do some fun SAQ practice with another kingdom that we didn't mention in this stream. And we're going to see if we can apply our knowledge about what we learned previously to the SAQ. So it's going to be a really fun stream today.
Yep. All right. Time to introduce ourselves. So I'll start with me. Our name is Jad Cowit, and I'm a high school junior. So I took the AP Road test last year as a sophomore. So I pretty much had a good idea of like what the content is like, and with lots of grinding, I got a 5 minute test. So which is kind of surprising. So my tip would be like watch the personally my tip for you is you want to watch the Crash Course World History series. But since you're doing like an AP World Modern course, you want to start at like the latter half of it. It starts with like 1250 to 1450, like along those lines. But like you wanna just watch those videos especially if you're a visual learner, because that's how I learned. So it worked for me so much. So all right.
Yep. And what? Okay, hi. My name is Charlie. I'm a sophomore in high school. I took AP World History as a freshman. It's just kind of a weird thing my school did. And I got a 5 on the test too. And since we're talking about like materials we like so much, I guess. If you go onto YouTube and you type in AP Pop or APOP, I don't even know how you pronounce it. There's these lectures by this guy named I believe his name's like Mr. Popovich, but if you are a learner that learns by listening to stuff, his stuff is really great. He's a little monotone, but he has a lot of like really great content. And if you have your Strayer's, if you use Strayer's Way of the World, it completely aligns with everything used in that textbook. And if not, it's still really valuable information. And I definitely think it helped me get a 5, also with 5 school.
All right. So you might be wondering, so why are we talking about art and architecture? So all of these are important because they all tie back to imperialism and the word imperials. So if you want to look, if you see like tricky vocab words, you want to look at the stem words. So you might have heard throughout the year like the word imperialism. So I would just define it as just the expansion of empires through trading conquest. So you think of like your typical empires like Rome or even Britain, like as like time progressed, or even the Mongols, like all of them invaded, or I mean they did trade, but they pretty much invaded like neighboring like states and nations, so that they could expand, because all they care for is power and authority and like dominance over the regions. So that's how I would define imperialism and the word imperial itself. Once again, so why are we talking about art again? So based on like from College Board's course description, rulers actually use art and architecture to like legitimize and consolidate their power in land-based empires. So what it means is they just use art. They use architecture to just flex their power, to make authentic, to make it official. So like, because if you like see it's like even today, if you look at someone who has a mansion and like, oh, he's pretty rich, he's pretty influential, or he's pretty powerful, because why would he have the mansion in the first place? Something like that. It's the same thing here. So rulers consolidated the power. They made him stronger. They made the empire stronger by just building these majestic structures that even lasted today. So we're gonna go over most of them today in throughout the 1450s, 1750s. So anything you want to add?
Yeah, just something quick. You might also be thinking, like, going off of what Jed said, that there isn't a lot of art. Like, there's also a course called AP Art History. So, like, why are we talking about art history in AP World? Well, when you go do your, let's just say your DBQs, and we'll talk about like DBQs that we've done in the past, whether they be from like last year or years before. They usually have one thing that isn't a text document. They'll have something that's art a lot of the time, and you have to like visually analyze it, and you have to talk about it and how it relates to the question. So it's really important to be able to understand and able to figure out the content and the context and the function of art, even though this is AP World History. So it's kind of like a fusion of AP Art History and AP World History. So yeah, it's kind of like the intersection where the two subjects, meet together.
All right.
Okay, so we're starting with the Inca Empire. So you may also hear this be called the Incan Empire with an N at the end, or the Inca Empire with a K instead of a C. They're all the same exact thing. They just have a lot of different spellings. So they were active for not really that long of a period, a little bit less than 100 years, but they could have lasted a lot longer if it weren't for Spanish colonization. There's this guy named Francisco Pizarro, and he killed the last leader, and his name is Atahualpa, and his name is on there. So if it weren't for the assassination of Atahualpa, it could have probably lasted a lot longer. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't, influential and important in its own way. So it was the most expansive, the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. It covered portions of Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, which is essentially the entire western side of South America. There's only like a few nations it didn't touch. So it's really great to see such an expansive empire over, less than 100 years. They created this road system. They basically created the 1400s version of like a highway, and people would travel this throughout the entire empire. And it was really beneficial because it allowed for easy transportation of goods and trade. And it's still utilized till this day because we obviously still used roads. And they also had this thing called quipu, and they're really cool. They're like these almost string-like necklaces. Like they almost look like necklaces, and they would use these little beads on strings to record stuff. It's almost like if you had an abacus, like the Chinese abacus, and you turned it onto a string. You know how they used the abacus to add numbers and like track if they did this and they did this. But it's essentially the same idea, but without Chinese contact. So it's really interesting to see how much they did in such a short period of time. Also, there's a poll.
Yeah. Yeah, so I added the poll real quick. So like, is this your first year 5 yes or no? So also Mr. Little pointed out, yes, Inca Empire is one of the few north-south empires in history because they're usually like east-west. But the Inca Empire ran along like the coast of modern-day Peru and like South America. So that's pretty interesting to point out. So yeah.
Very few empires.
All right. No, you're good.
Oh my God! Hi, Camille. Oh, yeah. Hi, Camille.
Oh.
Oh,
Nice. Okay, so now that you know about the Inca Empire, let's talk about like, the city of Cusco or Cusco, like how other books spell it. So it is the Inca capital. So like it's like how the Aztecs are known for like the capital city is like Tenochtitlan. So the Inca capital is Cusco, and it's actually situated in the valley, which is pretty interesting because typically like in Europe, like empires are just like in the plains or like in the Mongol Empire, so yeah, the rivers. So the Inca capital is located in the valley, which is pretty strategic when it comes to like defending themselves and like like just being strategic in terms of agriculture and all. So when you're talking about like fine buildings and palaces, there were like a couple that's like pretty notable. So like the first is Coricancha. You'll see a picture later, but it's the Sun Temple. So back then the religion were the Incas, they connect themselves with nature, so it's more they were polytheistic, so they believe in multiple gods, and one of them is like they believe in nature. They just worship nature. Like it determined like their harvest, determined their like produce with like agriculture, their like the abundance of like animals to hunt. Like they believe that it was the gods that were responsible for that. So they often like put a lot of gold and like wealth on it. Like they offered them to the gods. So they had like temples dedicated for like the wealth and sure, you may think like, oh, they just put it's like a bank, it's like a storehouse of wealth. But at the same time, the main reason why you would have a temple there, just not only to like put all this wealth, but to also like show the other empires. So like, oh, I mean other tribes or local regions. So like, oh, we have something to like offer our gods. Like we're actually like it shows a part of their culture. Like we're really reverent to our deities. And on the flip side was Saxa Wyman. Wyman, I know I botched it probably, but it's on the flip side. It's more about a fortress for defense. So that's one of the reasons why the Inca Empire managed to like withstand like about like at least hundreds of years, because they're able to defend themselves. They were able to like collect themselves as an empire and ward off enemies, so like smaller tribes, and keep the authority over the South America. And as Charlie said earlier, they had a road system. So they had the developed Inca road systems that were like usually made of like rocks and all, and it was pretty versatile. And it went through like uphill, downhill, and even like town centers. And they also had ceremonial plazas for religious and state processions. So whenever there's a religious ceremony, they have like an allocated space. Like it's like a town center. Like imagine like downtown, your whatever city you're on, where they just dedicated it for like events, special events. Like, oh, we're gonna do like so we're gonna sacrifice like our lambs or animals, and or we're just gonna just it's just like the king or the leader was just gonna make a proclamation it's in the middle of the courtyard. They dedicate all those plazas in those places. So there's that.
Yeah, and Cusco is probably one of the most like best known South American city. This is just a connection to anyone that might be a fan of Disney. If you've ever seen The Emperor's New Groove, what they're talking about is the city of Cusco. Like it's based off of this city of Cusco in Peru. So if you've ever seen that, you pretty much already know like what Cusco looked like, in drawing form, of course. But it's still a nice way to see all this really kind of factual-based historical stuff and see in kind of like an animated manner. So these are just some remains of the two sites in Cusco. We have the Coricancha, which is the Sun Temple. And after Spanish colonization, it was turned into a church. And they actually built a convent around it. So around it is something to do with Christianity, and it shows the Spanish influence, the introduction of Catholicism into South America, and how Spanish conquistadors kind of just wanted to get rid of all the remnants of this native culture that were still there by introducing them to Catholicism and other, European traditions, European values. And then we have Sacsayhuaman, and it's the fortress. It was probably used as defense, but we don't really know. And it may be unfinished, but we also don't know. A lot of this is just kind of, we have to predict with certain things, but there are areas without rocks. So that's why people believe that it may not be finished. But even if it's not finished, it was used for defense, and it was probably very effective. It's a lot of rocks and they're stacked pretty high, even though this picture doesn't really seem like it. So next slide is also the Inca, and I think Jed's going to do that one, right?
Yep. So you might be thinking like, oh, architecture. So you might not even think of like Maize in the first place, but they kind of like blend in. Agriculture still counts, depending on how like you think perspective-wise. So, maize was one of those crops, and it's basically corn. So it defined Inca culture. So it defined agriculture. Like it was the main crop of the early 1100s to like 1500s, and it was one of those crops that like got like exchange in the Columbian exchange and went to Europe, and it helped diversify diets. So back then Europeans were like, well, they were like not really malnourished, but like they didn't have like the diet like we had today. Like we had like, you had the fiber, you had the vitamins, you had the minerals. So corn helped like complete that cycle, that circle of diet. Dietary needs like Europeans needed back then. If you want to overlap it with culture, Incas like treated like corn with respect. It was actually used as a ritual offering. I mean, you may be thinking like they just had human sacrifices, not all the time, but like they also offer like their harvest. Once again, their animals. So since corn was their primary crop, they did offer that to their gods in like those sun temples, like Harakucha earlier. So, and once again, long-term effect is that you have increased variety in diet in the Western Hemisphere, so like Europe, Asia, after the Columbian exchange, um, and you can see like I think I've seen like in gold before, like there were like are actually sculptures and like corn in like in some places in modern day South America. So you can see how you can also argue that in your SAQs or that it did define culture back then. So
yeah, and you can also tell they shared a lot about certain things and they put a lot of time and effort into it. And you may just be thinking, oh, it's just like a life-size corn on the cob. But in reality, each one of the kernels was individually made and then individually placed onto the cob. So obviously that had a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy put into it. And it's the fact that it's lifelike in its real proportions just shows that they put a lot of like focus into it. Also, if anyone has questions, be sure to put them in the chat, and then we can answer them as we go along. Also, another comment, if anyone is taking AP Art History, all of the works that Jed and I are going over today are required works for AP Art History. Or even if you're interested, they're all required works for art history as well. So be sure to take note of that. They're definitely important works. They're 250 really important works. So going on track again, so we're going to go over the Mughal Empire. And the Mughal Empire was from 1526 to 1540, and then it took a 15-year-long break in between, and then it started up again in 1555, and then it ended in 1857. So the second half of the Mughal Empire was, again, super, super long, like compared to other empires, but also like the Inca, we can make this comparison. They ended because of colonization, but in this case, it was British colonization. So the Mughal Empire was also very expansive. It took up most of the country of India, modern India, but it also took up Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. So pretty expansive. A lot of notable leaders. We have Akbar, who you might know from a little earlier in world history, but he was known for being very religiously tolerant, and he was willing to accept people of different faiths, even though the Mughal Empire at this time, and still is to today, parts of India that were once part of the Mughal Empire, predominantly Muslim. So, but he was willing to be accepting towards other religions, and we'll see this in the work we're going over next, which is actually the Taj Mahal. So like a very well-known work that Jed's going to be going over. And I want to skip to Aurangzeb for a second. Aurangzeb was the last leader of the Mughal Empire before British colonization. And then we have Jahangir, who is like not as well known, but if you ever take APR history, if you're interested, there's another work from the Mughal Empire that is known as, it's called Sufi Sheikh. Jahangir prefers Sufi Sheikh to the king. It's something along those lines. It's one of the longest titles I've ever seen in art history work, but it is honestly really cool. And it shows the influence between Mughals and the British. At the very bottom is the king at the time of Britain, and there's a portrait of him. So it's kind of like showing the combinations of these two religions, almost like somewhat of a syncretism. So as I mentioned before, accomplishments, religious tolerance, really important. People are starting to accept each other for their religions at this time, even though that doesn't really last once we get to India a little later in world history. And they created a centralized government. So they kind of rallied all these people from different tribes of different religions and put them under one government in a peaceful manner. So it's honestly a really big achievement that the Mughals were able to accomplish in such, a fractioned kind of broken up time span, even though it was a long one. So Jed's going to be doing the Taj Mahal.
Yep. Okay, so if you ever had to like pick like at least top 1, 2, or 3 like architecture like successes during the 1450, 1750, I would like number 1 for me would be the Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
Because as Charlie had pointed out again and again, that the we call this the Mughals have had a lot of accomplishments. Like they had centralized government, they had religious tolerance, and the Taj Mahal, the constructed Taj Mahal, was just like the final straw just to like prove everyone was like, oh, we're the best, something along those lines. Like, and yeah, so it is. So, Taj Mahal is you might think it's like, oh, isn't that just a tourist attraction? Actually, it was built as a mausoleum. It was built by Jahangir's son. So like Jahangir from here, Jahangir's son Shah Jahan during the mid 17th century to honor his wife, his deceased wife, Mumtaz Mahal. So you can see where the name came from: Taj Mahal, Mumtaz Mahal. So yeah, and as you can see in the picture, there's like a near perfect symmetry of the pillars, like the 4 pillars on the side. And of course the building, like if you like cut the picture in half, you're like, ooh, pretty interesting. So art history people is gonna be like, ooh, I love this. So, and you can see that it didn't only feature like Hindu or Islamic features. It featured like a mix of them, like syncretism. That's like a vocab word that means like blending. So it blended like the styles of Persia, Turkey, India. So that ties back to like religious tolerance. So it's actually good if you can like connect 2 themes. So you can connect like political like these structures used for political like legitimacy, and like you can see how like it connects to like interactions between like different regions like Persia, India, and like you can connect it to like art. So like it's already like 3 out of like 6 themes in AP World History. So if you're doing that, like you're doing a great job. So going back, basically you can see like the spires, like the dome, like it kind of like resembles like Islamic architecture, and like the domes and the arches and the other features around it. It also like talks about like from like India or Turkey. So you can see, once again, you can see like a blend. You can see a combination of different elements from different states. So Charlie, we go over the Ottoman.
Quick to go off of what earlier. Yeah, a lot of influence. You don't exactly see because it's kind of like from a distance, so you can't really see like exact kind of details. But the tile inside the Taj Mahal is all painted by hand, and some of them have calligraphy on them, which is really popular in Islamic art, particularly Persian art. Persian art, we see a lot of calligraphy, which is essentially just script. We script in English like we see, but there's this type of script that's really difficult to write, and it's almost illegible to people who spoke Arabic or Persian, and it's known as Kufi, and it's really close together, very thick, intricate black strokes, and there's a lot of calligraphy, not exactly black inside of there, kind of just to go with the color scheme. It's gold and white inside mostly. But a lot of Persian influence as well, because even though Persia didn't really have as much art or a lot of as much notable art compared to like the Ottomans or the other group, the Ottomans and other Islamic art that we see. So I'm now actually on topic. We have the Ottoman Empire, which lasted for a crazy long amount of time. Started off in 1299. And ended in 1922. And 1922 was when Turkey became a nation, and so it actually remained unconquered for a long, long time. And this is the land that was taken from the Byzantine Empire. And if you know anything about the Byzantine Empire, it was already pretty big compared to other empires. but the Ottomans loved growing and conquesting land and like trying to get even more land, even when they were already way too big. So I had to put location at its greatest extent because the Ottomans gained so much land and then lost it so many times. So Ottoman land included Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Greece, Egypt, North Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, Bulgaria, Hungary, and I couldn't write anymore. So
You can just wrap them.
so many. If you have a map, I'm going to bring a globe over here. It's kind of hard because this globe's all gray, but I'm going to try and show you guys. So it goes into Northern Africa, which I didn't mention. So Northern Africa, which is around here, right? And it goes even into Saudi Arabia, which is like where my thumb is right now. And its furthest extent was Austria and Hungary, which is right here. So this whole area is pretty much the Ottoman Empire during this time. Like the Ottoman Empire was so ridiculously expansive that they had such an influence on the cultures of all of these nations, even now that they're modern day nations and some of them speak Slavic languages and some of them speak Arabic, Ottomans had such an influence on them. So their notable leader that I chose was Mehmed II. And you might not recognize his name just by hearing Mehmed II, but he's a really well-known leader because he's known for his hat. So during this time, different leaders of the Ottoman Empire at this time would have like almost like Jed was doing onion hats, as a lot of fellow AP World History students refer to them. Essentially like just a humongous white turban, but like the size of this. And they're referred to a lot as onion heads, kind of informally, but you might recognize him from maybe a picture in your textbook. Other than that, though, he was a really productive leader, and he led to the expansion of this empire into Central Europe. So yeah, other than being humongous, other accomplishments, they completely controlled Mediterranean trade routes. They had lands in modern-day Algeria, Egypt, even up to Sudan. So even though Sudan doesn't have a coastline, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, they have this whole coastline along the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean, you also have places like Italy and Spain and France. So they had a lot of, other than land, they had a lot of like water territory. And they also controlled trade routes in Northern Africa and part of the Middle East. They went all the way down to Saudi Arabia, parts of, and Yemen, even if you went even further. So Jed, you want to do the one on the next?
Yep. Okay. So you remember, like, wait, there's another guy named Suleiman II. So he's one of the leaders. So context time. So during this time period, there were like Ottomans were rivals with another empire called the Safavids, and like I could go over like all the time. I could go over like if I had the time, I would go over like the conflict they had. But like basically, what you need to know, they were rivals during this time period, and eventually he fought against the Safavids, and he died in battle. So number one, all these Ottomans like honor him by building a mosque. So you can see here, it kind of looks like a Taj Mahal. It's like a memorial. It's commemorate the life of Selim II. So he was a sultan for the Ottomans. So it pretty much showcases the architecture of like how Ottomans like built their mosques. Like one way or another, if you Google like mosques and like if you like Google them, you can see like a variation of like this kind of design. Like maybe this the spires to the side are shorter, maybe the dome is larger. But either way, you're gonna see some varieties of like the original like format. Like there's a dome, there's like at least 2 to 4 spires on the side, and this mosque, like any other mosque, they had vast prayer halls, and they featured like geometric shapes, and like you can see like a semicircle, or if you like geometry, like you see a triangle, or you see like a square on this side, and they can just like look at it and just have fun with it, you know. And you can see like earthen heavily motifs. Like if you look at the second picture, like once again, they label like the parts. So there's like a pier, there's a squinches, there's a mukarnas, and there's like the dome. And you can see like if you like look up like designs of like the actual like dome, like they have like once again like Charlie pointed out like calligraphy, and like there's like images of like the sky, there's like colors, blue, like dark colors like blue, gray, like cloudy white, and then you can see like earthly colors like green or yellow or brown. So you can see like like it's like telling you a story. Like if you're that person like appreciate like not really appreciate, but like you just see art for like not only just like colors and like symbols, but like it tells a story. So like that's what like mosques and imperial art and architecture does. So it
Something.
also
Oh, I'm sorry if I interrupted you. You can keep going.
Okay, no, don't worry. Feel free to jump in, but like, yeah. So like, its inscriptions also differentiate Islam and Christianity. So like, if once again, if it had a picture of the dome itself, like it actually told a story of like how it depicted Allah as indivisible, and like it actually showed Muhammad as God's human messenger. So that it goes back to like the Islamic origin story. So if you look at the big picture, like this mosque not only honors Selim II, who died in battle for the glory of the Ottoman Empire, but it also honors like the origins of like the Ottomans as a Muslim community from like the Middle Eastern region, which is where this mosque is situated. So that's if you had to like pick one architectural like structure from the Ottomans, it's this one. So yeah.
This is actually a really interesting mosque. Not exactly based on art, even though it is really interesting. Like these pillars are much taller compared to, and skinnier than pillars that we've seen in like the Taj Mahal, which are a lot shorter and a little stubbier. But the location of this one's really interesting. And you might be like, oh, it's the Ottoman Empire. It's not really that interesting. They're Muslim. But they chose not to build this in Constantinople, which is modern day Istanbul. It's the capital. It's the biggest city. It's literally much bigger than any other city in this area. It is a major city. Millions of people live there, and it's the most well-known. They trade with a bunch of other people. But the constructor of this was like, no, I want to build this in a town called Edirne. And the thing about Edirne is right on the border with Europe. The last town in Turkey. It's on the little tiny section before you get to the rest of Turkey. It's the last town. It's like the town that you would go into before crossing into Bulgaria or Greece kind of town. And they chose to build it in Edirne because this is the first thing they wanted travelers to see as they travel into the Ottoman Empire. This was the first town you would cross into through the border. And they wanted all visitors to just be like completely flabbergasted and be like, wow, that is an absolutely amazing structure, and be, shocked by, how artistically, how advanced it is for the time and for the location even. So they just wanted them to be completely shocked and before they would go to Constantinople, Istanbul, and see other works like the Hagia Sophia, other mosques and other churches. So the next slide is
So also that ties back to like the key concept like you guys should know, and like in terms of architecture and art. So empires wanted people to be shocked. They wanted the shock value. They wanted like the amazement value. So that naturally that decision of like the Ottomans, the architect was like, smart move. So just a quick note. So Charles gonna go over the Kingdom of Benin in Africa.
Ooh, this one's fun. It's the Kingdom of Benin, or if you ever spoke French, I think it's Benin or Benin, one of the two. But it's actually located in Nigeria, which is kind of odd because there is a country in Africa called Benin, but it's not located in Benin. It's located in Nigeria. Again, one of the longest African empires to ever exist. It's from the 1100s all the way to the 1900s, and again ended because of European colonization. We don't really talk about this empire as much in AP World, which is kind of sad because, as we're going to see later, there's a lot of really cool works, a lot of intricate works, and you can see two of those examples right now on this slide. So they were really involved in the bronze trade. And you can see that by the first one, which is a face, and it's completely sculpted out of bronze. And the next one that we're actually going to go over is also pure bronze. So it just definitely shows you the impact that this had on their culture, on their art, on their the decisions that they made artistically. And also kind of like, what was I saying? The Mughal Empire. They were very centralized. They were able to kind of unite these different tribes, these different groups, especially in an area that's so culturally diverse and religiously diverse as well. So they were able to unite all these people along the West African coast, which is very long and a lot of different people, a lot of different places. So yeah, it's one of the more impressive empires during this time in Africa.
Yeah, so actually this the first picture has been one of my favorites. So by the way, so moving forward. So once again, people the occupants of like the kingdom of Benin were actually like good in like sculpting, like making plaques, or like here like miniature versions of like animals or even humans, as you can see, like the helmets. And like they didn't do it just for fun, they actually did it to like showcase their culture. You can see like that had actually a distinct design, just like concocted in Benin. And you can see like these animals are like locally situated in the kingdom. And that same goes with like bronze or brass sculptures. So if you look closely at the picture, you can see like, oh, they had like intricate they had like trinkets in them. The guy in the middle is actually wearing like a necklace. There's like a baby in the middle, and you can see like a lot more stuff going on. They had weapons. So they were really attentive to details. So they had leopard tooth necklaces. They had like ivory, which is like probably like one of those words you associate with Africa, or like, yeah, especially in the western part. And if you go look in the middle, like if you look at the king's attire, he actually has a better looking helmet than the other attendants around him. He has like a mask and like ornaments around the waist, and you can see like the attention to detail, which makes these products like high value. So like for this plaque, like it's a question Oba. Oba means king in like the Benin language, and it basically like the value of these goods, like, and also the depiction like suggested like social status or rank. Because if you look, let's say if you look at these guys, like you can see like how you can like imagine like life in the kingdom, as either as a king or as an attendant or as a local tribesman in Benin. And what it ultimately does in like, not only in this one and not only in these two, but it commemorates historical victories. It shows like in battle, it shows like religious rituals and scenes in life at court. So there's actually like, I think I've seen like one sculpture where it's like they were like mid post in battle with like their spears and they were like in their battle clothing. So it shows like victories in battle. It's like shows like they were like their pride in like their pride and joy in battle, and their passion in fighting. Also show their like religion, like their reverence to nature with once again the animal figurines here. And it showed scenes of life at court. So once again, especially in this plaque where the king is just sitting down, he's surrounded with like his attendants. So that's like a typical scene you would see in like everyday like noble royal Benin life. So yeah.
And they also have him looking very in a leadership position because he's standing up in this very straight position. He has a very kind of not really, he's not smiling, because when you're smiling in art, it doesn't really make you fear the person. It doesn't make you want to listen to the person or, exactly listen to what they're saying. Like when you have this kind of neutral face on, serious, the way that they depicted his face almost in like a serious manner makes him look a lot more, like better as a ruler. And these two people on the side that are holding this thing open for him, they look very compliant and like they'll do stuff for him. So it almost makes him seem even more powerful. And to go off what Mr. Beckman said, you don't need to memorize all of these. These are just for synthesis points and DBQs you could use this for. You could use this in any essay as outside evidence if you just know this. A lot of art history you can use to defend world history. So that's why we wanted to do this. We wanted to show how you can talk about these different empires and how they were able to give their power, how they were able to express their power to other people through art. So that's why we're doing this. Not exactly so you have to memorize every single word, exactly what they look like.
Yeah, like don't cry yourself to sleep. Don't worry. So, yeah, I mean, if you had to pick one, like, just think of like anything. Like, if you just look back at the stream and like if you ever have a test, like they're asking you like, oh, imperial art or architecture. Just look back at the stream. Like, think of like one thing, like one picture that you saw, and probably like just think of it like, oh, I remember now. It's from Benin, or like earlier it's from the Ottoman Empire. So you can do it, things like that. But like, we're not forcing you to remember stuff. If we like we were trying to like, encourage learning. That's like it's like it's like from yourself. Like we're not forcing on you, but you're the one like initiating it. So Ms. Longnecker said you can also use some of the strategies we are demonstrating to analyze images. So yeah, you want to look at the faces. You want to look at the equipment. You can look at the details in the pictures. So if you ever like do like hippo or like happy or in like DBQ analysis, but that's a story for another day. So Charlie will go for the Empire France.
So I believe this is our last one before to practice. And okay, not entirely sure, but I believe it is. And this is one of the probably more well-known empires in European history for sure. So it's the Empire of France, and they were definitely broken up and back together again, and then separated for a long, long time. And this was because of different revolutions, just different changes politically. So from 987 to 1792, so that was because of Charlemagne earlier. And then we have this time period in between, and then we go back to 1814 to 1815, and it was just like 1 year it was back together, and then it fell again, and then we have 1815 to 1848. So as its name implies, it was in France. We have some really notable leaders at this time. We have Louis the 14th, sorry. We have Louis the 14th, we have Louis the 16th, and we have Napoleon. So probably some of the more well-known European leaders like that are known for just being really strong or really powerful leaders, or in the case of Napoleon, really great at conquering lands and then really great at being exiled twice. So accomplishments. They're one of the 5 maritime European empires. They were fighting. They had rivalries with Spain and the Netherlands and Britain, and they were rivals because they wanted all this land. They wanted to colonize different areas. They wanted spices even, and they were just like kind of feuding with one another over who could get the most land in different areas. And they were incredibly influential, especially in Africa, as we see in the 1800s with imperialism, and also incredibly influential in Southeast Asia, which we'll see more in the 1900s. A little later when we get to the Vietnam War, which will probably be a few months from now, but still really important in France. So Jed is doing the next slide.
All right. So what it's probably like if you did like history, probably 8th grade, you probably heard the word Versailles before. Even I think in the modern day songs, like I think there's somewhere there like like songs that go like Versailles or something. But like yeah, so Palace of Versailles is one of the most like significant architectural like in France, architectural structures in France. Like you may know modern day, you may think of like the Eiffel Tower, but also like this also like demonstrated like political authority. So it was actually built by Louis XIV and to centralize power. So back then, and it's actually 712,000 square feet, so it's humongous. If you look back here, it's in the first picture. It's really, really, really humongous and really, really vast. So it's not a joke. And it showed that size mattered in power when it comes to power in Europe at least. So the catch here is that nobles were required to live inside, so they didn't have a choice, unless you want to face like repercussions like imprisonment or even jail. And it actually symbolized like how society in the ancient regime were before the French Revolution, like the old French society, how it works. So the way how nobles were supposed to live inside, like it showed like this palace, this glamorous structure was exclusive to only the cream of the crop, the top of the pyramid, the upper class, where it's like the nobles, compared, like, it shows like how superior they are over the common man, the common folk. So and you can see here, if you look at it, once again, you can look at the details here at the top. There's a lot of inscriptions there, and there's a lot of like paintings, and inside there's a lot of good gold. You can see like stand out like gold, like silver, like really bright furniture there, and so you can see how the palace of Versailles was synonymous with like wealth and richness, and yeah.
For sure. And Versailles is such an important place, an important term even in world history. If anyone has ever studied World War I, or if you're even on World War I already in AP World, Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles, was actually what they signed to end World War I. So this place has a lot of importance, even though it was just like the place where they were required to live, and it was really just a pretty building, and it was a way for rulers to show their power. It was even important later in history when we get to the 1900s, because it influenced World War I, and World War I was the Great War, so it had a lot of impact on Europe, especially. So is that our last empire?
Yep. So we're done with the content. So hope you guys had fun going over them. Now we're gonna go to practice. We have like one set of like multiple choice question, and we have a set of like SAQ questions. So
Yeah.
we're gonna do some practice.
Yeah.
We'll see what you learn here.
So,
and all right.
Jed and I specifically chose empires, not exactly for this one. This one has to do with the Inca. But when we go to the SAQ, we specifically chose an empire that we hadn't discussed. Like, we discussed lots of empires today, but we specifically chose an empire that we didn't go over because we wanted to see how you guys can use your knowledge and use the strategies that we use to demonstrate, to analyze the images, and to how you can make connections based on artistic techniques and materials and designs and cultural connections. But before that, we have this image. So.
All right, so we have a stimulus-based multiple choice question, which is like centralized on the picture. So we have here an early 17th century illustration by a Spanish friar. So words like that should stand out. Spanish friar. So Martin de Mura depicting the Inca Pachacutec. So you can see Inca, like the emperor, praying to Inti, the sun god of Coricancha, the sun temple in Cusco, which we showed earlier. It's from a book called De Mura's History of Peru, for which he consulted many native people. So you can like look here, and like you see like, oh, there's the sun, there's the sun, and you see this guy's is praying, and you can see that this there's like text, and there's like words inside. If you can't understand, no worries. But usually like words or inscriptions in the source also helps. So that's pretty much what stands out in a nutshell. So let me ask you this. Which of the following best describes how Pachacutec used the Sun Temple at Cusco to legitimize his rule as the Inca emperor? So we have 4 choices here. Is it A, by connecting his authority to the sun god? Is it B, by glorifying his personal residence? C, by memorializing his military victories? Or D, by providing employment for his subjects? So I'll make a poll real quick. So MCQ.
Can answer that. Just a quick little cultural connection. I'm just trying to, trying to relate all these different things, even though this is world history. A lot of people, you might not just be able to like exactly like catch on to facts without some type of like connection. So if anyone is really into soccer, and you've ever seen, if you know about soccer, you've probably seen, the flags of Argentina or Uruguay at some point. You are a fan of soccer. Okay. If you've ever seen the flags of Argentina or Uruguay, you see that there's a sun on them. And this is not just a random coincidence. There's a sun because the sun is Inti. The sun on it is the Incan sun god. So if you just wanted to if that's a way for you to remember that, there's the Incans worship the sun, if you just have to remember it because you know the flag is of Uruguay and Argentina because of all the World Cups you've seen, then definitely use that. It was just a little connection that you can make. But yeah, definitely use the poll. Answer that. It seems like we have 3 votes, but you can wait a little.
Okay, wait a little, but like, dang, yeah, it's a good strategy. I didn't even know that. I need to learn. I need to do that strategy where like you connect stuff because usually there's like visual learning. There's like like you learn by listening, and there's learning by making connections. So that's a good strategy you guys can use too. So. All right, so we're 3 people saying A. Last call, 10 seconds. For the win, yeah.
Connections. I feel like connections help me so much with AP World. You don't really see how much like certain things, like very old things, kind of influence things that you see later in history. You don't see how like even like things can influence something like Nike, which like if you know Greek mythology, you know the god name isn't pronounced Nike, but you see, even though it's not as like great of a connection, I feel like every time I see something that's Nike brand, I end up thinking about Greek mythology somehow. So it's definitely a great thing to do is definitely to make connections. And if this works for you, that's great. If it doesn't, then it's a really great way. And in AP World, there's a lot of mnemonic devices like Hippo, or I use Spice. Things like Happy, I used Happy for essays quite a bit. Make mnemonic devices for yourself as well. It's really great for studying. How is the multiple choice?
All right. So it's still 3 people saying A, so let's see if you're right. Good job, you guys are right. So it's actually, how does Pachacutec use the sun temple? Yeah, he's connecting his authority to the sun god. So what I would do, he also demonstrates his piety, devotion. This is common in many empires too, like Miss Longnecker said. People like having a ruler who's devoted to state religion, because what usually happens is that if a leader like converts like this religion, so let's say like there's this guy named there's an emperor named Constantine in Rome, so he converted to Christianity. Back then Christianity was illegal, but eventually because of him converting to Christianity, he got converted by missionaries. He eventually legalizes Christianity over the regions. So like usually like people follow the lead of the leader, the rulers. So this is a continuity in history. So once again, making connections.
For sure.
Okay, so yeah, so going back here, so you can do process elimination, or you can do like if you just think it stands out already, like, oh, I mean, this is what he's doing, and you see his son here, like, oh, he's connected to his sun god. But I would usually do to be safe, like process elimination. So you can see, you can like kick out B, like he's not glorifying his personal residence. If it's not that, I mean, it doesn't look like that, like it's not like a mansion or like any like example like of like an architecture like really we saw earlier. He's not focusing on that. He's actually like revering his god. So it's more about like God than like earthly riches. So he's also not memorializing his military victories. Do you see evidence of like bloodshed or like weapons in the picture? I don't think so. So you only see like a harmless little harmless friar is praying to what's his name? Let's see, what's his name? Inti. So I was like Inca. So yeah, and you can also kick out like provide employment for his subjects, because you can see here it's focusing more about reverence than like employment, or like you don't see like a couple other people there like lining up for like for like to get a job for him or something like that. Like I usually think of like imaginary scenarios, like, oh, are there people there like looking for a job? Not really, so it's not that one. Or you can see like military battles, like do you see like people fighting? I don't think so, so it's not that one. That's at least how I approach multiple choice questions. You can do it in one way or another, but like that's how I do it. So good job, guys.
Yeah, definitely. So that is actually on, I believe, the Qing Empire. Yeah, okay. So we have these Qing portraits, and they're 2 very different portraits. But before we even get to that, I want anyone who's still watching to go into the chat and maybe give 1 or 2 comments about what they know about the Qing and the Manchu. Just like some general information, because a lot of people mix them up. A lot of people believe that the Manchu are ethnically Chinese when in reality they're not, and it's a really it's a misconception that can be easily reversed. Yeah, a lot of these works were really fun. Actually, before the stream, we were talking about how much we liked the corn one. It's definitely different compared to other ones we've seen, especially since a lot of the ones we picked were architecture. We wanted something to go in between that would just kind of like offset all the architecture. And we had a few arts. There was another option for us to pick for the Inca because we wanted to do a lot of South America. But we chose the corn one because it was just so different. And it showed authority in a new way, like with something that wasn't exactly human, but something that was kind of inanimate. So yeah, definitely just like 1 or 2 bullet points in the chat about what you know about the Manchu, what you know about the Qing. Qing was a really influential empire in China. So it's going to be really great for you to know some general information before we get into this mini SAQ. We're not going to actually be writing it out. It's going to be a little bit more of like a discussion. Yeah, especially.
Don't be shy. We're not gonna judge you for being wrong. Like it's like you think like you're not always correct like in your first try. So
it's just for you to like be able to learn from your mistakes, because history, if you read your textbook, history is essentially just trying to make up for mistakes and then making more mistakes. So what you're doing if you make mistakes in history is you're just being a historian. Yeah, the Qing come after the Ming, last dynasty before the collapse of the Chinese Empire. Yeah, definitely true. The Qing is the last dynasty. It actually ended in like the 1900s. So definitely one of the later empires like the Ottomans. We're not going to wait for any more comments. Just want to reiterate the fact that the Manchu are not ethnically Chinese. They're their own ethnic group. So next slide is actually the SAQ question. And
okay. So after the collapse of the Manchu Empire, Republic of China was really great job. Yeah, totally spot on, Jacob. Yeah. So this is where you might see like all those memes and like, oh, communist China. Yeah, all those like come after the Qing Empire falls in like the 1900s. So that's right.
So your first part of your SAQ is asking you to identify one difference in the portrayal of Kangxi Emperor or Emperor Kangxi. I don't know if that's in the wrong order, in the paintings that were reproduced above or on the last slide. So I'm not going to ask for comments. I'm just going to talk about this from like a world historian, art historian kind of like viewpoint, because I'm also taking AP Art History coincidingly with not world history, but also European history. So I can, kind of talk about that a little from my perspective. So if we point out some obvious ones, we see Kangxi in one of them in a seated position, almost like a scribe kind of position. It shows his wisdom almost, because writing was only for the very educated. So in this one, he's portrayed more as a scholar, whereas in the other one, he's portrayed more as a leader. He's completely covered in armor. He's on a horse. He seems a lot more powerful because of this facial expression that he has and the items that are on him. And then beforehand, he looks a lot more relaxed, a lot more focused on almost education. It's odd to say, but he is in a seated position. He's writing, whereas in the other one, he's going off to battle or doing his duties as an emperor. So in one, he's a little more portrayed as a little more authoritative than the other. And then definitely another thing I want to point out, which is not really asked of the question, but I want to point out the difference in color. Now, we both see red in both of them. We see like these nice pops of red. But when we see the first portrayal of Kangxi Emperor, we see a lot more bright colors. And that just may be to make the painting seem a lot more just refreshing overall, a little bit more calm overall with the choice of colors, while this one seems a little bit more dreary, almost serious because of the use of muted yellows and browns and even white is considered a little bit. It's not like a very bright, colorful kind of color. Part B, I believe you're going to do part B.
All right. So, by the way, Charlie did a good job. Like that's like an AP art history perspective. Like, wow. Okay. So, explain how. Okay, part B is explain how one of these paintings could be used to legitimate the Qing or Manchu dynasty in China. So, if you remember the word earlier, it's a vocabulary. You want to lean on to the word legitimate. You might get thrown off, or you may not. So, legitimate means like to make official, to make it more authentic. You want to make it more like you want people to like, if you're a leader, you want people to believe that you're actually like born for the role, like you're ready for it. So the kind of academic vocabulary that can be a part of like an answer or a question AP test. So they'll let those throw you out. So it says here, explain how one of these paintings. You just pick one. So you can pick the left painting. You can say like, oh, the Kangxi Emperor is implied to have like like limitless wisdom, or he's shown to be educated. He is capable of leading the country through like knowledge gained from like reading texts and all. So you don't have to overthink the scenario. You just like the first thing you see in the painting. So you can say that, or you can pick the right painting. You can say that the Kangxi Emperor is depicted to yeah, so you can say Confucianism. Yeah, if you want to go more specific. So, like the sage emperor by showing like him practicing calligraphy, like you can say that, or you can go to the right way.
He's very scholarly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Very scholarly. So you can say on one end of the spectrum, you can say the other end of the spectrum where he is very depicted to be very courageous, very like has military prowess in battle. He's not one of those leaders that's just like today, like back then where leaders were like actually part of like the people fighting. He's part of the troops. He's the one leading the cavalry. Like you can say that where you can say he's very brave or courageous. He's experienced in battle. You can say that too. Like both qualities are like traits that like people would look at for an emperor. So you can say that tough and tender. So I like that, Mr. Beckman. You can just say that in your explanations, and you like, boom, you can get that 1 point. So, yeah. So Charlie would deal with part C.
Part C. I'm gonna wait for it to pop up. Okay. Explain the similarity between the Qing and Manchu and another land empire. Sorry, in the period 1200 to 1750. So, what's it called? We went over lots of empires today. We went over the Inca. We went over the French. We went over a lot of empires. And the first thing I would do if I'm seeing this question is think of all the empires that existed in this time. And then I want to just choose the ones that are land empires. So it's might seem like a little confusing of a term, but land empire just refers to an empire that's on land. It's not exact. It sounds a lot more difficult than the definition actually is. So personally, if I were doing this SAQ, like if I were retaking the AP World History Modern test, I would choose maybe the Mughals. So both of them wanted to show off their power. They both wanted to show how strong and legitimate the government was, and they did this through art and architecture by making things, even though the Taj Mahal, and I'd use the Taj Mahal in my example for this one, even though the Taj Mahal was meant to commemorate someone's death, it didn't need to be something that was so grandiose, something that wasn't like so symmetrically structured. It didn't need to be something that was so detailed. Like, even though it was meant to commemorate someone, it was almost like kind of also to show how strong the Mughals are. Like, we're doing this in memory of Mumtaz Mahal, but we're also doing this to make our empire seem more legitimate. And that's what the Manchus did here with I would have picked the second the second one on the side. So another similarity, the similarity is that they like to show how powerful they are through art. And if you want to say, let's do another empire, and maybe the Ottoman Empire, when we saw the Mosque of Suleiman II. The Mosque of Suleiman II was also to show how strong the empire was, how strong it was, how amazing it was, so that they could show this to people that were coming into the empire. And this is also shown to show how strong Emperor Kangxi is. If you don't want to compare, like an architecture to an art, or even though this is asking you to compare dynasties and different empires, if you want to also compare their arts, which you also can, because that was definitely always a great example, a great connection. If you want to compare different art, we can compare it to the Silla dynasty, which we didn't go over. The Silla dynasty is a little earlier in Korean history, but it is in the 1200 range. And they also made pictures of emperors. And they showed their legitimacy almost similarly to the first one. There's this very well-known painting from Silla, Japan. I don't mean Silla, Korea. Don't exactly know the name, but it's almost like this, but he's wearing a pink robe, and he has like this kind of taupish background. So another similarity between these empires is that they wanted to almost scare their citizens into being compliant with their emperor's orders. And then if we want to go more religious routes, another similarity between maybe China of this time and Silla, Korea, we can also talk about like the impact of Confucianism on their cultures. But if you wanted to stick with like the art similarity, you can do that. But if you want to talk more about the religion, we can always do like something about Confucianism, which is a little earlier in world history as well, but it's still very widely practiced during this time. That's all I have to say, unless you want to add something in.
Yeah, if you're blanking on art, remember we have like 6 teams in AP World History. I think we call it Spice Tea or Inspect. So if you're like artist, architect, culture, if you're like blanking on that, or religion, or like anything else, you can always go back to like the question and like look at the hint. Like it's asking the Qing and then the land empires. So remember how we went over the definition of imperial earlier? So we can go over the political part. So like if you think about China today, it's really fast. It's really it's like most of Central Asia today. Like you can't say Asia without China. So that's what the teacher said. So yeah, so you can say that like how it expanded compared to another empire during this time. So you can say you can argue a lot of empires. You can look at a lot of empires, but the number one I was thinking of is Russia, because if you think about it, like Russia's like this, and it's like one below it. So you can say that they expanded the same way. So, you can just say like how like you can even talk about, not even, you don't have to even go over specific. You just say like how they expanded, like the rate of expansion, like how fast, like how they destroy, they like obliterated their like their neighboring tribes, or even states. You can always like look at big picture stuff like expansion or like origins, so hint. So yep,
that's all I have.
You guys have any questions?
Yeah, be sure, like, if you want to ask questions, ask all the questions you want in the chat. But if not, we can end. But we'll probably wait a few more minutes for some questions to come in through the chat. But continuing off of what you were saying, yeah, definitely the expansion factor. Or we can talk a little bit about, again, a little earlier in world history, but I think still fits into this time frame, is Sinicization, which is definitely something that I use on all of my AP World History essays that had to do with China. China trying to change and make other ethnic groups ethnically Chinese. And this happened with the Manchu, even because the Manchu aren't ethnically Chinese. They were trying to make them more Chinese. This is very similar to what we see in Russia with the Russian expansion, like you were talking about, into Siberia. They were trying to like Russify these different Siberian Turkic groups. So that's another similarity that we can see between these two land empires. Again, it's an SAQ. It's supposed to be something that's brief and to the point, but still informative. So you don't need to write like a whole thesis. As long as you make a well-developed point and in a really concise manner while still using a little bit of evidence, and you do it with the time restraints, you're going to do really well in the SAQ.
Yep. If you guys are here, you guys are doing great. Like, are they a good pace? Like, your architecture, but there's like Taj Mahal, just go, and like the Maize or the mosques. Like, yeah, you got this, guys. So
Okay, it seems like we don't really have any questions. So I guess last call for questions, but if not, we are going to end this stream.
Yep. All right. Thank you guys for tuning into our stream, and we really appreciate it. Like, have a good Sunday night, evening, and
Good Thanksgiving.
just have fun. Thanksgiving. Yeah, we got those not leftovers. Like what? Yeah. Have fun. Just get to gobble those turkeys.
Okay, everyone. So it's really fun. Oh, wait. Okay. Okay, we have a really quick question. Okay. Jacob.
Okay, so there's two options for like you actually not two options, but like you can go to like the Fiveable website, so it's fiveable.me. And once you get to the website, there should be a small like a bubble in the corner, like a chat bubble where like a bot's gonna ask you like, hey, do you have any questions in the AP world? And you can say sure. Then you can actually talk to people, like real life people, like real people, like real experts, real previous students. So you can like ask them questions over there, and like we call it the intercom chat feature. Or you can just actually, yeah, that's actually the best option for
That's probably
that's the best option.
If you want to contact us directly, I believe that all of us, because we work for Fiveable, all of us have Twitters. So
yes.
If you really want to ask us direct questions instead of talking to someone in a lower right-hand corner, mine is just my first name. You can look earlier in the slides if you really want to see my first name. He put his email, but
Yeah.
I'm going to put my Twitter in the thing if you really want to ask me some questions there. It's literally my full name. So I
Mr. Beckman. Yeah, so there's also Mr. Beckman is actually a regular in the intercom chat feature. I mean, it used to be there a lot. I hope I could be, but like Mr. Beckman's like the real expert here. So
yes, and this painting is actually really cool. It's probably one of my favorites that we've gone over so far in art history. It's just really cool to see this syncretism, this like combination of cultures. Definitely, he included a link, so definitely check it out. It's very I don't want to say busy because busy sounds bad, but it's very busy, that work. It has a lot of intricate details. So it's definitely something you want to go check out because you can just spend hours looking at every little tiny thing.
All right. Last call.
Last call for questions.
Yeah, you got this, Jacob. All right. So, all right. Time to go then. All right. See you guys.
See you guys. Bye.
Have a good one.